And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another Hoosier Hysteria episode of the Assembly Call. As tonight, your Indiana Hoosiers officially kicked off the preseason practice portion of the season with their annual fan celebration and recruiting showcase. I'm your host, Andy Bottoms, here with Ryan Phillips and man on the scene, Jared Morris, who will be joining us and has joined us already live from Simon Scott Assembly Hall. So let's start tonight's show as we start every show, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And for me, I think the easy one would be the women's NIT banner. There's no better banner moment than an actual banner moment. But, for me, it was actually just being able to see these guys. So much build up, so much excitement over the course of the offseason, and to be able to actually see these guys play, albeit for only 15 minutes. And, Evan Fitzner, the shooting that we'd heard so much about, was certainly on display. Demezy Anderson's ability to score, the activity level of a guy like Jake Forrester. Some of the, again, as we are wont to do, we'll probably read too much into a scrimmage here, but at this point, it's all we've got. But I think some of the things that you looked at and you pointed to about what we hope this year's team would be and their potential ability to hang a banner, I think you at least saw in brief flashes some of those things. And Archie Miller said in his comments before that was excited to have the crowd be there to watch these guys grow. And so this is step one in the process. And but some encouraging things for sure we're seeing, and excited to have actual basketball, albeit just a little bit of basketball to talk about. So for me, that was the banner moment. I'll go to Jared here in a second, see if maybe he has one that he would throw in on top of that. But today's Hoosier Proud banner moment is brought to you as always by Hoosier Proud and now their new brand Home Field. For years, Hoosier Proud has been the best place to find Indiana-themed apparel made by Hoosiers for Hoosiers. And back in August, they took that expertise and created Home Field, a premium collegiate apparel brand that tells unique stories about each school. So now you can find the comfiest and most unique IU apparel at homefieldapparel.com. At HoosierProud.com, their flagship site, you can still find the best slate of Indiana-themed apparel, all while sending 10% of your purchase to causes around Indiana like the Julian Center for Empowering Survivors of Domestic Abuse. This week, be sure to check out Home Field's IU Champions Tee, featuring the 5 championship years and a vintage IU basketball design, which I actually am wearing right now. And don't forget to use code ASSEMBLY at checkout at either site to get 15% off your first purchase. That's promo code ASSEMBLY at HoosierProud.com or HomefieldApparel.com. Now it's time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. And I will start with who has been described as Indiana radio's most opinionated, polarizing, and over-the-top personality. He is Ryan Phillips. Ryan, what was your rant? Any rants from the show? I have a feeling I know what it might be, but any rants from Hoosier Hysteria?
I don't know what you're referring to, but I'm excited to find out. But no, my thing was I thought it was a little short. I thought they could have gone a little longer. I thought they could have maybe let the scrimmage play out a little more, do like 2 halves of a scrimmage or something like that. I thought it was all kind of just real quick, and I get why they do it that way. I just would have liked to see more. I mean, I've waited so long to watch these guys play that I wanted to see a little more. But one thing that stood out to me was this is a much taller, longer, more versatile bunch of players. It's just obvious on the floor. They're bigger, and you can tell that they have guys who can do multiple things. A lot of these guys look way more confident shooting the ball. Some of the bigger guys look more confident shooting the ball. I agree with you. I thought Evan Fitzner stood out a little bit. I thought Race Thompson certainly stood out a lot. And I think that while that's been really silent around Indiana basketball, Race Thompson's development, I think we've hit that a lot this offseason, how we thought he was going to be a big deal. But I definitely thought Fitzner and Jake Forrester were the people who stood out in that scrimmage, just from Forrester was hitting shots. We didn't see a whole lot of that last year. You saw Race Thompson really dominating down low, and you saw Forrester's energy, which they've talked about. So I thought those are the takeaways. And also, I'd like a little more of a program there, a little more going on, but everything that they did was great, as always. The multimedia stuff was fantastic. The intros were fantastic, and you got to see the banner hung, which was very cool.
All right. And to my right is a man who usually sits in this seat and hosts, but who has soldiered on to be there in person and get his first person perspective, even an interview alongside the great Herman B. Wells earlier today. So I'll throw it to Jared. And Jared Morris, what were your impressions from being there in person?
You got to come see Herman when you come to Bloomington. I mean, always. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it's not bad. People will be able to tell that you're there, but it's this kind of, hard hitting on the scenes type of journalism that people will be able to get past slightly less than optimal audio to get your perspective.
Sure, we're live on the scene. So a lot of takeaways, and like we'll talk about them all as we go through the show. I think the most important thing that happened wasn't anything from the scrimmage or wasn't anything from the dunk contest or the 3-point contest. It was the announcement of the Oladipo Zeller Legacy Center as they introduced the new locker room. I think that is huge. I think it's obviously huge to have two guys who are, currently in the NBA, such legends at IU, to lend their name, to lend their money to that facility. And I think what makes that really important is, you're talking to guys like Trace Jackson Davis and Keon Brooks. I can actually see Keon Brooks on the floor right now as I talk. And, these guys want to come to Indiana and they want to do well here, but they want to then go on to the NBA and they want to be stars. And what better way to paint a picture for a player about how you can do that as a Hoosier than seeing a guy who is currently a superstar. And so I think as Victor Oladipo's star continues to shine brighter and brighter, having his name right there on the Legacy Lounge and Cody Zeller too is going to be a huge recruiting tool and just a not so subtle reinforcement that, hey, NBA superstars play here. You want to be that, you can become that here. And so I think of all the things that happened today, that announcement and just, locking that name in and what it means and what the locker rooms themselves mean, I thought was really meaningful. It was really cool to hear that those two names will continue to be a part of Indiana basketball, in perpetuity now.
Yeah, I thought that was really exciting. The locker room looks amazing as you just look through all the different facilities, upgrades, and updates that have taken place across the varsity sports at IU. That's just another one that was pretty amazing just to see even the glimpses they put in video. And I'm sure there are certainly things that don't come through even on those kinds of scenarios. So exciting for those guys to be. Those guys who came from, the prior coaching regime, quite frankly, to be that invested and that excited to continue to be a big part of the program and to give back in that way is pretty awesome. So a lot of different ways we could go. I don't think we'll go through every single player and kind of break down what we saw and overanalyze that. But let's start it out.
Enough.
Yeah, let's start it this way. So Ryan, I'll go to you first. Give me one guy who stood out to you the most for whatever reason. Could be because they were a lot better than what you thought. Could be because they were exactly what you thought, and that was reinforced beliefs you had. But give me one guy that really kind of jumped off the screen to you in some way tonight.
Well, it had to be Evan Fitzner because of what the team was missing last year and what he brings, and he just has such an easy stroke from three, and he's very
San Diego bias.
There you go. Hey, no, he went to a rival high school of mine. You cannot accuse me of bias. That's and if you see him at all this weekend, Jared, you tell him La Jolla Country Day rules. Francis Parker stinks. But he just has a real easy shot, and he has so much confidence in it. You can just see and he's so big that he doesn't feel like he can get a shot off over anybody, all that stuff. We're going to have to start seeing him on the inside because he's going to have to work, outside in a little bit to make that more of a threat. And he's going to have to defend on the interior. But I just thought how easy right off the bat in that scrimmage, he knocks down a three, comes back down, hits another three. And they were from different spots on the floor too. So I just thought his easy 3-point stroke was huge and will be huge for this team.
Jared, what about you? Being there, who really stood out to you?
I thought to me, for a team where the biggest question marks are the point guards, I thought we saw some nice point guard play. And, look, that's to be expected. It's a scrimmage. The point guards are going to control the action. But I thought specifically what you saw was the first three possessions, Devontae Green come right out and create scoring opportunities for his teammates. The very first one, I think he had a nice little pass to Evan Fitzner. Maybe the second or third possession, he drew the double team. And instead of forcing it into Fitzner, Zach McRoberts' man left him wide open on the wing. Devontae had the vision to find him, and Zach McRoberts knocked it down. And those are the kinds of plays and the kind of decisions that we want to see Devontae making. So I thought that was impressive. And I thought the reason why the Cream team won the game is because Al Durham kind of took over at the end. And I thought he really asserted himself. I thought there were two straight possessions where, he found Jake Forrester for alley-oops. By the way, I think it's going to be hard to keep that guy off the floor. I mean, he's going to be a little rough around the edges, but his bounce, his activity, I think he's going to find a way to earn some minutes. But I just thought Al looked really confident and looked really, kind of in control of things, looked assertive. And so I thought, point guard is going to be the biggest question mark. And so at least for the first test, as much of a test as a scrimmage at Hoosier Hysteria is, I thought we saw some encouraging signs from those guys.
Yeah, you guys hit a lot of the. Jared took some liberties there. I think mentioned at least 3 guys when I asked for one, but we'll let that go. But Forrester is one of the guys I would have mentioned. But since you touched on him already, I mean, I'll certainly say Race Thompson. Ryan, I know you mentioned him in the opening, but I think just from an activity level standpoint, showed different ways to score, stepped out and shot a 3. And I think that's something that Archie said earlier in the week about him, was that's going to have to become a part of his game to really step out and face up. And just an activity level. They talked about he's a guy who really likes to get in there and mix it up. And I think you saw that over the course of the game tonight. And I think when you look at him and Forrester in tandem, they can be some interesting compliments to Juwan Morgan. They can be guys who may have to spell him when he comes off the floor. And I thought both those guys, just from an activity level, that can make up for a lot of things over the course of a game, just playing hard. And those two really struck me as guys that were going to be in there, mix it up, be really tough defensively and tough on the glass. I know, Jared, you tweeted out a play where Race really, Justin Smith tried to go baseline on him. He cut him off, made him take a really forced, contested long 2 that eventually missed. And I thought he acquitted himself well on both ends of the floor. So for all the depth that we talked about heading into the season, I think being able to talk about so many guys as really jumping out, none of whom were Juwan Morgan or Romeo Langford, probably speaks well to the depth there.
I'd like to cut in and break some news real quick. I would like to report live from the scene that I just watched Trace Jackson Davis and Keon Brooks walk up the bleachers and then walk underneath the banners and out of Assembly Hall. So I'm assuming they are now going off on their evening to have a fun adventure. But I did see them, and it looked like Keon Brooks is wearing a Vancouver Grizzlies jersey. Not sure what player, but interesting. That
Marbury, maybe.
I think it was reported earlier on Twitter that it was Mike Bibby.
Mike Bibby. Okay, that makes
sense. Very nice.
Yeah, we're really piecing together all the hard hitting stuff here for sure.
They seem to be enjoying themselves. So
all right, good. Just good. We appreciate that.
Stop stalking high schoolers, Jared.
I'm just watching. Hey, by the way, yesterday when I was at Best Buy, I had to go to Best Buy because I forgot a cord, and I'm FaceTiming with my wife and my daughter in the car, and a little Jeep pulls up right in front of me, and I look up, and it's Juwan Morgan. He was there to get something, and all of a sudden my daughter's like trying to tell me something. I'm not paying attention because I'm watching Juwan in the Jeep, and my wife is like, "What is wrong with you? You're so starstruck." And I was like, "She's like, are you gonna go chase him now?" I was like, "No, I'm gonna let him shop."
You're like that every time you see me too. It's fine.
All right. Well, so let's on that note.
Sorry to derail the show, Andy.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, Ryan and I never do this to you, so this is unfortunate. All right, so we didn't really talk too much about Juwan quite yet, but certainly I think we'd be remiss not to talk about him at all. So his team, along with Brenna Wise, won the 3-point contest the way they did it, where a person from the men's team was paired up with the women's team. I thought his shooting looked pretty good there. He was out for part of the scrimmage in the middle, but I think he had a bucket inside, had another and one finish. Jared, as you mentioned, good to see him make a free throw. Jared, I'll go to you first. Any thoughts around Juwan that you kind of saw from him there? Was it just kind of a guy that you know what to expect, that's the leader of the team, did exactly what you think he would?
Yeah, it seemed like it. Nothing really jumped out. It's a little – the media wasn't allowed on the floor today because of the light projections that they had. So I didn't really get a chance to get as close as I wanted. And my vantage point was up here in Section K. So, it was tough to kind of see up close and see some of the interactions. It was a little bit further away. But, yeah, I thought it was nice that he, went out there, helped win the 3-point contest. I thought his shooting stroke looked really good. And it seemed to me like, scrimmage, he was just willing to kind of, take a back seat a little bit, let some of the other guys kind of take charge. But, nothing in particular really jumped out.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting the way they split the teams up with him, because you kind of look down those rosters, and the red team had Romeo, Fitzner, Justin Smith, McRoberts, and Devontae. So a number of guys that you think are going to be in the mix for starting spots. And then it was really like Juwan and Al on the white team that you knew what you'd get. And, maybe they knew that Race Thompson was going to score 9 points in the scrimmage, and Jake Forrester played well. Jerome Hunter played well on that team. But I thought it was kind of a, again, it's easy to read a lot into this, but it was just kind of a like, all right, well, let's just see if the guy who we expect to be the leader of this team can will what maybe is a less talented group to victory. Ryan, did you take anything away from how they split these guys up for the scrimmage? I just thought it was odd that it was Juwan and really a group of guys who I would not anticipate starting at least at the beginning of the season.
No, I mean, I think it was probably just the coaches said, nah, let's go with this lineup. I mean, the coaches put way less thought into this as far as like the results and stuff that we're going to. I mean, this is all we're going to be able to talk about for a month, because this was our only glimpse of the team. But honestly, as Archie Miller said when he came out, he's like, yeah, we're just going to put on a show for you tonight. This isn't a serious practice. And so I don't really put much stock into anything we saw tonight because, it was all for fun. It wasn't a serious practice where they're going to go watch film of it later and break things down. Or even if they do, there's 15 minutes worth of film to watch with a running clock. So there's nothing really to take away from a serious perspective. I think they probably just put the teams together and said, oh, this will work. This will work. This will work. All right, go do it. I mean, we've seen in past Hoosier Hysteria. I don't know if it was past Hoosier Hysteria or back when they did it a long time ago before it was named Hoosier Hysteria. We've seen guys change teams in the middle of the game. I mean, it's a practice, it's a scrimmage, it's supposed to be for entertainment purposes, and really that's all it is. So I don't put too much stock into anything we saw tonight, who started, who played where, who played with who. We'll start to see that when the season kicks off, and we'll start to hear from, when we get actual practice reports, what's going on.
All right, Jared. So you were there to see Romeo's first action on the floor at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. The ovation at the beginning was obviously huge. He won the dunk contest in the kind of the final round of that was a little bit anticlimactic, but first impressions of Romeo.
Wait, I have a question. Is that what you thought my rant was going to be?
No, I thought it was going to be because you had complained about not streaming it for free. So I assumed
that is a rant I should have gone on, but we'll talk about that later.
We'll save that for later.
Well, now I can't like tee you up for it. I mean, that needed to happen organically. So Jared, I mean, impressions of yours of Romeo, mine from watching him was just like, he makes everything look really easy. And I think that was really the big thing for me. It didn't really look like he was like jumping that hard. Deron Davis was even saying similar things when he was on the broadcast for the dunk contest. It's like, he's not really even, doesn't look like he's doing anything, but he's, making some pretty impressive plays. What were your impressions of him?
He's just such an effortless athlete, and that doesn't mean that he's not providing effort, but he's just so smooth, which is what Archie alluded to when he said if he was an NFL player, he'd be Randy Moss. If he was a sprinter, he'd be Usain Bolt. Like, he's just got that about him. And he's just got such a glide to him. And we knew that from his high school film, but it was interesting seeing it in person. He came out for the player introductions as expected. His ovation was the loudest. You couldn't even hear his name be called. I will say, for the record, Juwan Morgan's introduction was the same thing. You couldn't hear his name either. So it was nice to see that level of appreciation, from the fans for the guy who's been there for 4 years and the new guy as well. I thought Romeo in the scrimmage, didn't try to do too much. But I think, he showed on that, the one little play where he kind of glided into the lane and hit that floater. I mean, he's going to be able to get that shot anytime he wants it. He can get to spots on the floor. He can do things that we haven't really had a guy be able to do. And so, and one thing I'll say about the dunk contest, I thought the setup of that was a little bit strange. It's odd to have a dunk contest where you try to judge the finals based on like fan cheering, because there was no audible difference between who won. And so it was just,
Romeo's was the loudest every time on the broadcast. So
was it? I mean, maybe it was. I didn't really hear that big of a difference, when they did it. But I mean, I thought he probably deserved to win because he had the best closing dunk. And again, that dunk was one that was a lot harder to complete than he made it look. It's just, he's a special kind of athlete. And what makes him a really special recruit is he's also a very skilled player. So when you get a guy who's a skilled player, and also, the other observation that I had from the scrimmage is I thought he really competed on defense, especially early on. Like, I thought he, hustled back. I thought he worked hard to beat guys to their spots. I thought he had a nice, play around half court where he jumped up and, knocked a pass down. And, for a guy, people have kind of questioned, will that be a weakness this year? he's certainly going to have an adjustment when it comes to learning defensive principles and understanding how hard he has to play all the time. But to see him come out and his natural instinct was to compete in a scrimmage, I thought that was good to see. So
I will say this, Jared. I think that what you're alluding to is that they need to invite us to judge the dunk contest next year. Is that that's what I'm getting from that? Is that we need to be sitting there? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's clearly the takeaway.
Yes, that is definitely the takeaway.
All right, that's what I thought.
We're so impartial. So yeah,
we'll have to contact some people.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll see what we can do. All right, let's take a short break here to offer a quick reminder about our free email newsletter, because with the season fast approaching, now is absolutely the best time to subscribe to it. If you're a serious IU Hoops fan, you really do need to be subscribed. You'll get our weekly 6-banner Sunday news roundup, as well as our detailed post-game analysis emails once the season begins. Those emails are a 1,500 to 2,000 words of additional in-depth IU analysis, often stats-based, that we don't post on our blog. So you have to be subscribed to the email list to get it. And that is why more than 6,000 of your fellow IU fans are already subscribed. Joining them is easy. Just text IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. That's IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com.
Hey,
all right.
I have breaking news.
Oh, more breaking news.
I don't have Keon or Trace for an interview, but we do have the coach.
Hey,
we
there's
just
the
found
coach.
this up here in Section K. He made it to Hoosier Hysteria.
Perhaps no greater upset today than, I don't know what's happening in college football, but potentially no greater upset today than having the coach at Simon Scott Assembly Hall for Hoosier Hysteria.
Event he really loves.
Now, I will let you know, he can't hear what you're saying right now, but he is smiling along because he's a true professional. We will be able to hear him. So I want to get your thoughts real quick, Coach, on how excited were you that before the scrimmage, they did actual basketball drills? Is that like the greatest moment of your offseason?
Yeah, your tweet was right.
Can you hear him?
Your tweet
yeah,
was
it's
right
okay.
on. I was excited to see him going up and down and stretching, and I was worried about the dunk contest. I didn't know if they stretched enough at that point, but yeah, the scrimmage was nice.
Any other takeaways while we have you here?
Al Durham.
Yeah.
I'll talk Al Durham. I haven't heard part of your show yet, if anyone's mentioned that. I thought he looked good. I thought Race Thompson looked really good, getting up and down the floor, getting off the ground and getting some rebounds. And the depth is there. You can really tell. I thought Demezi struggled early, but then he scored 7. Yeah. So there's a lot of good things to look at in that brief moment. Nothing super to tell for the season long, but those two things stood out. Al shot, it looks beautiful.
Yeah, it does. Heading to the next now?
Yeah, I saw where you were at, so I walked up here to see you, and then that's where I'll go for a little bit before heading out.
Awesome. So if you're here in Bloomington, hang out with us. We'll be at Nick's a little bit later.
Jealous.
Man, you guys are just rubbing it in. I'm going to shut this down right now. No, I'm no. All right. So Coach did bring up a guy. I did want to talk about a couple of the freshmen that we hadn't touched on yet. And so Demezi was one of those. So that's an easy segue for him. He just strikes me as a scorer through and through. Just finds ways to put the ball in the basket. Scored his first couple baskets more in the post, or at least inside. Hit a nice 3. I think in the 3-point contest, was just looked kind of smooth, but again, somewhat effortless. So he's a guy, I think it's going to be interesting to see like how his role shakes out, because he's a guy that can go out and get you buckets. But by his own admission earlier in the week with some of the stuff, there's some pieces of it he's struggling with. So Ryan, I'll go to you first on Demezi, but what were your big takeaways from watching him play in the 15-minute scrimmage at the end of the proceedings tonight?
Well, Jared said on Twitter that, Demezi doesn't really leave his feet when he shoots, and that's true. And so part of what I want to see from them is them kind of unlock his athleticism a little bit. I realize that's going to take time. That's probably a next summer thing. But
let me say, he didn't in the contest.
I know.
He did more in the scrimmage. Okay.
I know. And yeah, once you get a guy moving and going up and down the floor, it's going to change things. And that was kind of what my next point was. But you want to see it where that is every time, every action he has, that he's not so flat-footed, because I thought at times in the scrimmage he did look flat-footed. Now again, he's a freshman. This is all new. As he said, he struggled with some things. He struggled with the speed of things, and he's going to. That's just the way this plays out when you're a freshman entering college. But I would say that I think that it would be nice to see sort of a little more athleticism in it, because we know he can score. If you can knock that up a little bit, that the ability to, maybe add a couple inches on the vertical, maybe be a little quicker side to side and getting up and down the floor, I think that you could really turn him from a guy who looks like he'd be a nice piece to being a really good player. And I think that that's sort of what they've got to try and do. And I'm sure, the coaches know that. That's the next step with him, I think, getting him comfortable in college and then working on making him a little bit more explosive. If you're going to have a score, you got to have some explosiveness to it.
Jared, so the other guy I wanted to talk about, I'll go to you first on this, but I'm sure Ryan will have some thoughts as well, was Jerome Hunter. I thought I'll let you give your perspective first about him and kind of what you saw from him in the scrimmage.
I thought he was very willing to shoot. He clearly had confidence taking outside shots. I don't recall him making one, but he took a few of them. Really, I thought he was one of the guys that didn't stand out a ton to me. But I thought he was aggressive offensively. I think obviously, his length and just the overall length. Even from sitting up here in Section K, like, you could just tell that this is a longer, more athletic team, and he's a big part of it. So, I thought what we saw from him today in the scrimmage reinforced what I think we'll see from him during his freshman year, which is a lot like Justin Smith last year. He's a guy who's got some ability. He's a guy who has some understanding to get into the right spots, but he'll probably struggle and be inconsistent early on. And if he can come along like Justin did last year, I think he's got a chance to be a really important part of the rotation, maybe even a starter later on in the season, because you can see kind of the talent and the ability there. But, now you've just got to start kind of chipping away some of the rougher edges.
Yeah, it's an adjustment period for everybody. It's going to be for these younger guys. And I thought that Jerome looked, like a guy trying to figure it out. But the thing is that, like, from what we saw, we don't really know. This could have just been an off scrimmage for him as far as scoring or whatever. And that, he'll have one tomorrow where he lights it up. And that's what you're going to get with freshmen, is a little inconsistency, maybe trying to feel their way through. I did think he was willing to shoot, which is a good sign. He's not shy, and that's great, especially for a guy who hasn't played basketball his entire, at a high level for a super long time. I think that that he'll be fine. And I agree. I think that if he follows the Justin Smith track as we saw last year and just gets better as the season goes along, that'll be great for Indiana, especially heading into his sophomore year. You'll see him really take a step forward, because I think talent-wise, he's better than Justin Smith. Maybe not physically, but talent-wise, I think he is. And as far as his ceiling is higher. So we just want him to get on that track as a freshman where he's consistently getting better all year. I think I'd be happy with all of the freshmen, just a steady improvement all year, as opposed to maybe exploding onto the scene and peaking out early. I want to see these guys really get better as the year goes along.
I think what I saw from Jerome was a guy who's going to be able to do a little bit of everything. And so even though I think I only had him for 2 points in what I had, but I thought he rebounded the ball really well, particularly at the beginning of the scrimmage, and then had the skill on one of them at least to rebound and then really push it up the court, and it led to a Race Thompson dunk. So I think that versatility of what he can do, he's talked about, trying to improve his perimeter skills and those kinds of things. But yeah, he seemed to me to be a guy who could do a little bit of everything, and is there'll be nights when he might score, 10 or 12 points. And there might be other nights that he scores 2, but still is able to impact the game either defensively or from a rebounding standpoint. So I thought that was a positive with him for sure. We touched on, I think that's most of the freshmen. Didn't talk about Rob Finney. Didn't start. I thought he had a nice defensive sequence on one of them. Let's hit a couple of the returnees, and then maybe we can wrap up here. McRoberts was one, the hardest working player in the country or something as part of his intro.
Yeah, he was introduced as the hardest working man in college hoops.
Nice. So I thought,
I was Jay Billis, but okay.
I was going to say
that. Nice. So Jared, the way they did the 3-point contest on the feed was a little bit hard. You didn't ever really get to see consistently, straight through one side of things going. So it was hard to really get a good read in a lot of cases on how guys' shots look. But he's a guy that we've talked about being able to really knock down and take shots. He did hit one early in the scrimmage. Any impressions from you on what his shooting stroke looked like, maybe compared to last year while he was shooting in the 3-point contest?
Nothing from the 3-point contest. Number one, just the setup of that I think is odd. We've got two people shooting on each side, so it makes it hard to follow. And I think when he was shooting, either Evan or Demezy were on the other end, and so I was focused on those guys. Either way, I wouldn't take much of a 3-point contest because you're never going to be in a game picking a ball up off of a rack and shooting it. You're going to be, shooting it off the dribble. You're going to be getting a pass from somebody. And I thought, the very first opportunity Zach had to come in and knock down a shot. I mentioned earlier when Devontae found him in the corner, and he took it. And that's the kind of assertiveness we need. Zach doesn't necessarily, he doesn't need to hunt shots. He doesn't necessarily need to look for shots. He just needs to take the shots that find him. Yeah, and I thought, too often last year, he would pass those up when a lot of possessions, he's getting a good shot with 15 seconds left in the shot clock. And that's the best shot you're going to get the entire possession. And you end up with a worse one, with 3 or 4 seconds left in the shot clock. So he's going to have openings because there are so many guys who you're going to pay attention to. And I thought he looked a lot more comfortable just out on the floor. There were a few possessions where, he even brought it up one time, I don't know that he was initiating the offense, but he was at least, instead of just always being a ball mover with the pass, it looked like he was just a little bit more comfortable putting the ball on the floor, getting into a pick and roll, and just, making something happen besides just passing it as quickly as he got it. So again, he's a senior. You would expect him to be comfortable in a scrimmage setting like this. So we're going to have to see it in games. But if at a minimum, he's just more ready to step up and shoot those open threes from the corner that he took, he can be a really solid 3-and-D weapon for this team, and that'll keep him in the rotation all year long. And his shooting stroke doesn't need to get better. He doesn't even need to shoot a better percentage than he did last year. He can shoot the same 39%, just take double the threes, and he's a more productive offensive player because the opportunities will be there.
Yeah, yep. I agree. I think that the stroke was fine last year. It was just the willingness to take him was the problem. And the fact that he just stepped into one right away in the scrimmage really said something to me that he's ready to take on that burden this year, which is big for Indiana.
Yeah, the other returnee that I wanted to hit was Justin Smith. We haven't talked about him too much at all lately. Had a good showing in the dunk contest. I feel like his legs are like tree trunks at this point. The way that he's
good.
Yeah. So that was a development that at least was visible there. But Ryan, anything stand out from you, from Justin in the scrimmage, or anything you saw from him today?
No, just straight up physically, he looks better. And I didn't think he was a guy who didn't, have a good body last year, but he has more of a basketball based athletic body than I think he did last year. Last year, he seemed like he was just kind of tall and skinny and athletic. And now it looks like he has a body built for to be a basketball player. And you guys remember, we saw OG Anunoby in person and we're just like, oh God, look at, like, his calves were enormous and his thighs were enormous. And it was just, he was built physically to be a basketball player. And I feel like Justin Smith looked a lot more like that out on the floor. And just the way he was moving, he looked a lot smoother. He looked a lot more like he was more of a quick twitch athlete who plays basketball as opposed to just being a tall, skinny, athletic guy. It just looked like he is built to play the game now. And I think that's a huge development for Indiana because he's a big part of this year. He's going to have to step up and be the third option. And he more than likely, as far as we're looking at it right now. And so I think that's a huge development, and dude looks like he's ready to play.
All right, Jared. So this is a question for you since you're there and it seems like you were kind of walking around the line at Hoosier Hysteria and things like that. I think we've certainly seen this from the folks that we interact with on the show, just kind of with the excitement about this upcoming season. Give us a feel for, what you took away from being able to be there, be around the fans, the people, waiting in line to get in. What's the general vibe there as you talk to people and get ready to head into the season?
The general vibe is a lot of enthusiasm about this team, of course, because of Romeo, but also because you have a returnee like Juwan and, because of the overall recruiting class. I think there's also a certain level of impatience because the offseason has been so long. And because of all the good news that we've had this offseason, it feels like this offseason is dragging on so much longer than other ones have. So people are just salivating and ready for any type of basketball, which we got today. But, I also think there's for this program not making the NCAA tournament for 2 straight years, there's a very calm confidence about it. And I think, that's natural because it's the fan base kind of following the lead of the head coach, who I think is setting a really solid tone for the program. Even though the results haven't been there the last couple of years, people have a real confidence in the direction of this program and the guy at the helm. And so I think that's really what I took from it, is people are just very much expecting this team to get better. I don't think anybody's expecting miracles, but they're expecting an entertaining season with a team that's going to play an entertaining brand of basketball, but also a disciplined brand of basketball, and a lot of talented, fun athletes to watch. And so I just think, that, and I think that will really carry over into the season. I think we'll see a lot of really enthusiastic crowds. And I think as long as everybody is patient and understands that it may take this team a little while to gel and for young guys to get their feet under them and all that stuff, the team has a chance to be really good by February and March. And I think everybody recognizes that. And that's why there's so much excitement.
And you know what else is exciting? This team might even be better next year, too. So you feel like you've got an exciting season on the docket right now, and we're really looking forward to this season. But when you take the long view of the program, you're looking at, well, this season will be fun, but next year could be even better. And I think we haven't had that in a long time. And I think that we're looking forward to this season when certain guys are seniors and certain guys are probably going to be heading to the NBA, and we're targeting this year. And then, well, let's hope we get some great recruits and can, bounce back real quickly. I feel like this feels different than we felt in a while, in that it's not only a chance for a great season this year, but they're building something that's really special.
All right, so we're going to go to last call here in a second, but we've talked a lot about individual players as we've talked through things so far. But I'm going to ask you guys to give me one aspect of this team that you feel better about, or maybe just differently about, after having actually seen them in action. Ryan, I'll go to you first. What stood out to you from a team perspective, not necessarily individually?
Size and versatility. I think that these guys look, not just, we knew they were going to be taller and longer and more athletic and all that stuff, but I feel like they're actually bigger than we thought they would look. And maybe that's just the offseason conditioning program, or just, most of these guys, we've seen their video online from their high school seasons. Obviously they've been working out. They look bigger, they look more put together, and they look like they can be versatile. I mean, you look at Race Thompson stepping out on the perimeter and he was banging inside. I mean, Jerome Hunter, looking at him on the floor, do you have any doubts that he could defend a post up if he needed to in a pinch? No, of course not. And I would feel the same way about Justin Smith and guys like that. Jake Forrester looks better and more athletic. It's going to be hard to keep him off the floor. So I just think versatility and size are two things that I think were an issue last year. And I think that because really you had Juwan Morgan as a swing guy, and occasionally you're having Zach McRoberts be a swing guy too, inside out. Now you've got loads of guys who could fill that role. And so I really think that's the most impressive thing and maybe most unexpected.
Jared, what about you?
Well, I talked already about the point guard play, so I was encouraged about that. But I think what I'm most encouraged about being back here and, seeing the facilities, experiencing this, hearing the announcement of the locker room, is that, this program now seems willing to step up and do the things that big time blue blood basketball programs need to do. The investing the money to get the elaborate light show. I thought that was great. I mean, that looked fantastic in person. And, I thought, they didn't do the recruit walk across like you got last year. So, Trace and Keon didn't get their loud ovation. And I'm not exactly sure why. So I'm hoping someone asks Archie in the post-game press conference, but they had him sitting in a different spot. So they were actually sitting up, in they had some reserved seating up in the main concourse area, not right behind the bench. And I think they did that so that those guys could see the floor projections, because they wouldn't be able to see them quite as well from the actual floor itself. And those look great. So that, the locker rooms and, just walking around Memorial Stadium and seeing how impressive that looks. Things look and feel more like big time college sports.
Of course, they do that after we graduate, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, I hope and I'm sure that the guys do, understand how many great players and great teams came before them that made all of this possible. That locker room is incredible. And that locker room is there because of what Victor Oladipo and Cody Zeller did, because of what DJ White did, because of what the '93 Hoosiers did. They are really standing on the shoulders of giants. And that's what is so great about this program. And I think the program and its traditions and its resources have deserved to have facilities like this and deserve to have a Hoosier Hysteria show like this. And I'm glad that now we're seeing it, because that's what it's going to take to get the next generation of great players. And to me, being here, that's my biggest takeaway, is it just feels more big time now. And that's what it should feel like.
I gotta say, my favorite part every year of any Indiana basketball thing is how the loudest cheer every time is for the watch shot. It was bigger than the Romeo Langford when they showed the video with the watch shot. It was bigger than Romeo Langford's intro cheer, bigger than Juwan Morgan. That gets the biggest cheer every time, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
They should start playing that when opposing players shoot free throws, right?
Yeah.
When they're about to shoot it, just play that shot. Everybody will go nuts, and it'll shock them.
Nice. Good idea.
Yeah, I think that until a big moment surpasses that every time that comes up, people are just going to go nuts.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I think it's time for our last call of the season. So we'll go around the horn. If there's any quick thoughts, Jared, it's probably appropriate to let you go first, because we're potentially the only thing standing between you and a trip to Knicks with Coach. So far be it for me to stand in your way of that. So I'll let you go first. Appreciate you jumping on while you're there, and hope you enjoy the rest of your visit for sure.
So a couple observations that just haven't really fit anywhere. I tell you one thing about this crowd and Al Durham. There is some real fan favorite potential with Al Durham. Like, you can just tell when he does stuff, it's like fans kind of get to the edge of their seat and want to cheer. Like, the roof would have come off of this place if he had completed that between the legs dunk that he was trying to do. He never did. But and I could kind of sense it with his introduction. He had one of the loudest cheers that anybody else got. So I feel like this fan base seems to be embracing Al Durham, which I thought was really interesting to see. Really, I think what I said previously just about this feeling more big time, I'll let that stand as my last comment, because I think it's absolutely the biggest and most important takeaway. But the only other thing I will say is, from the moment that I drove into Bloomington, I love being back here, always love being in this city. It's great feeling how the heart and soul of this city don't change, even though it continues to grow and develop, and there are new things. It's great seeing Coach. It's great seeing Will DeWitt, who's over here sitting by me. Took some great photos that we'll have to show you. But it doesn't feel right being here without you guys, who are such incredible teammates as we get ready to enter our 8th season. And I'm really thankful to have you two guys on this show, and really excited to now really kind of go into the third phase, I feel like, of the Assembly Call. We had those first 2 seasons that were so exciting, the 2012-2013 season. It feels like we've been in the wilderness a little bit since then, ups and downs and false starts. I really feel like now this season is the beginning of something new. And last season was because it was Archie's first season, but this year even more. I think we're going to have a really fun, good team. I think the future looks bright, and I am, really, really excited to watch it and chronicle it with you and the chat mob and everybody else who makes the Assembly Call community so wonderful. So I'm just I'm excited for this season, and excited. This is our kind of our first post game show, and I'm already ready to do some more. So the next month is going to be excruciating. Waiting for the next post game.
It will be.
Absolutely. All right, Ryan, what's your last call from today?
I just thought it was fun. I mean, I know I complained it was a little short, but I will say that Indiana, if you're listening, don't stick this on BTN Plus. Give us this streaming on Facebook, YouTube, wherever, on your homepage. Get the hits to your homepage. I don't care. Just put this where people can see it, because a lot of people don't have a BTN Plus subscription. A lot of people couldn't be there. Put this on where somebody can watch and get excited. You want people to get excited about your program? Give them access to this, and give them access to a showcase that lets you show off your players, get excited, watch a dunk contest, all that stuff. I think that really needs to happen, and this needs to stop. I don't know if the Big Ten has a rule about this or what, but if they do, tell them to go stick it. You need to show this off. You need to sell your program. Put it online. A lot of high school kids who who couldn't be there in attendance and want to watch this and get excited about high school basketball or Hoosier basketball. This is a great opportunity to sell the program. And that's basically what Hoosier Hysteria is supposed to be. Introduce the team and sell the program. And quite frankly, it should be free for every Hoosier fan to watch. And so that's my end second rant there. But the last thing I will say is I agree with Jared. Everybody who watches, listens to this show, we owe this all to you. You guys are awesome. We do this for you. God knows we're not making a ton of money on it, but it's a blast to do this for you guys, and really looking forward to another year of it, working with Andy and Jared, and having Coach and everybody else who makes this possible, and you guys, of course, who watch and comment. We love you, and your energy for this makes it so worthwhile to watch, or to do, and come back to every year. So really excited. This is our first show. As Jared said, it's going to be excruciating for the next month, not getting to do anything related to an actual game footage, but really fun, and really looking forward to season number 8.
Yeah, and for me, it was, this is kind of like you've got the present wrapped under the Christmas tree for quite a while, and we've had like a 5-month look at this present sitting under there, and you're trying to open it and figure out what it might be and what it might look like. And this was really our first glimpse. I think this is going to be a team that's going to grow a lot, but there are a lot of things to be excited about just from first impressions of these guys, their first time with the uniform on, playing at Assembly Hall. And I think there's a lot of, most of the reasons that people were optimistic coming into the season. I don't think anything that happened today should make anybody feel any less enthusiastic. The depth that we all look forward to and talked about that was missing last year, and the competition for playing time. I think you see that these guys are really going to go at each other and make each other better. And if Archie's going to get down to that 9 and 10 man rotation, there were some of the guys that we talked about being really impressed with this year that might not, or today, that may not be able to make their way into that 9 or 10. And I think that is a great sign for the program from a depth perspective, from a talent. And so I think those are the kinds of things that win you games during a slog of a 20-game Big Ten season, being able to have a number of guys that you can really turn to and count on. And I think that's exciting. And that's what I'm, most excited about, to watch these guys grow and watch what this team can become. But you can tell that Archie's excited about it. Jared, as you mentioned, the fans are certainly excited about it. And I'm even more excited about it than I was before after watching a 15-minute scrimmage. So I'm not sure what that says about me, but it's probably the same thing it says about a lot of the people who are watching this show and talking to us throughout the offseason. So an exciting first glimpse at this team. And we'll certainly have a lot to talk about and break this down a little bit more as we go forward with our shows for the remainder of the offseason, until we do kind of find a way to get through this next month or so without games. But it was an exciting unveiling of this team, an unveiling of the locker room. So we are excited, as both Jared and Ryan said, to be with everybody throughout the journey of the season. But that will do it for this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. Remember that our live broadcasts immediately following every IU game are always available on our homepage at assemblycall.com and on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. And you can always catch up on demand anytime with our podcast. Just search for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again on Thursday night for our next edition of Assembly Call Radio. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers.